when you run this dot command, I'm going to just place my final dot, you want to make sure that it's actually snapping. So again, your end snap is active here, and you're actually snapping to the end of that, and that places it where it needs to be. Okay, let me just, yeah, that's maximized. So I'm going to go now back into my top view, and incidentally, you can also just place your cursor where these windows meet and just drag this down, and that will sort of maximize just those two viewports. So what I'm going to do now is group these. Each one of the text dots along with the line is going to get grouped. And the way you do this is by starting your group command. It's this icon right here. It says group. Just left click, and it asks me to select the objects to group. So I'm just going to left click from left to right and select this, what we have here, which is a surface, a set of lines, and a dot. And when I'm done, press enter, and that's now grouped. So this is not grouped, and you can see that each one of these are separate elements. This is now all grouped, so I just have to select it once to move it around, and that sort of helps manage things. So right click to start that last command and select the next one and proceed like this. So you're going to just group each one of these individually. Okay, so now I have my dots and my surfaces grouped together. And at this point, I'm going to just zoom in a little bit into my top view, and I can just zoom out a little bit in my perspective. And what I want to do now is run a command called unroll surface. And that's what you should see when it pops up, so just hit enter to accept that. And it says select surface or polysurface to unroll. So I'm going to select this first group and make sure that the dot is actually selected as well when you do that. When you press enter, it will unroll it, and basically what it does is it places it relative to this 0 point and flattens it out. Okay, and this is a really quick way to lay things out rather than having to rotate each one of these individually. It's a little bit quicker doing it this way, I think. So I'm going to just drag that out, give it a little bit of space, and I'm going to do the same thing with the next with my next group. And actually, I think if you just pre-select it before you run the unroll command, it will just automatically do it, and you don't have to worry about selecting the dot. So that's what I just did there. You'll notice that they're not grouped anymore when you unroll them, so you have to sort of select everything and move it away manually. So again, I'm just going to select this group in my top view and then rerun that unroll command, and you can see that these are now being placed in the perspective view. I'm going to just give myself a little bit more room, and I'm going to just repeat this for these last sets. So I now have everything unrolled, all 7 of these surfaces, and I'm going to maximize my perspective view. And what I want to do now before I do anything else is just reorient all this. So I'm going to select it, just click and drag to select everything, and I'm going to just left click on this rotate command. So it's a rotate 2D command, and it doesn't really matter where I place my origin point. So I'm just going to left click, and then holding the shift key down, I'm going to left click again and then left click a third time to end that command. So this is now oriented up and down and will sort of make more sense in general, I think. So we now have these sets of surfaces along with the lines and the dots, and what we're going to do next is just select all the surfaces. So you can just left click on each one of these while holding your shift key to just add them all to the same selection, and make sure that you just have the surfaces selected. And we're going to hit delete, and So now we just have our lines again, which is really what we want. Now zooming in on our first set here, we want to create some sort of regular interval that we can use for dimensions. And so there's a very handy command called divide. And if you just type this at the very top prompt, divide, and I'm going to just select it with my mouse, and it asks me for the curves to divide. So this is the curve that I want to divide. Press enter, and it asks me for the number of segments that I want to use. Right now I have it set so that it will divide it into 10 equal segments. So if I were to run this right now, I'm just going to hit enter to finish that. These are now spaced 10 units apart. And if I wanted to dimension these, just to look at them, I go into my point snap, make sure that that's active, and now I'm actually snapping to these points. And so the dimension between these points is 360, and it makes sense because this is a 36-inch line. I divided it in 10, so it's 3.6 inches for each of those points. I'm going to show you the second option that you might want to look at. So if I again start up that divide command and select the curve to divide, and this time I'm going to use length instead. And let's say that I want the length of this division between these points to be, let's say, 2 inches. When I'm done that, these are now each 2 inches across. So if I were to dimension these, so I sort of gave it a nominal value. Rather than telling it how many divisions I wanted, I told it I want X amount of space in between each of these divisions. And that's another option that you could use. So I'm going to just undo that. I'm going to just get rid of my dimensions. And so I have these points now. And what are the points good for? The points are really handy for, obviously, for snapping to. So if I go into my top view, I'm going to draw a line now, and I'm going to do that using a polyline. So just left click on that, and you'll notice that I've got my point snap active, so it's snapping to that point, and I'm going to just start the line there. I can zoom out, and with my shift key held down, I'm going to just make sure that it goes beyond my last surface at the very top there, and end that line. So I'm going to do that for each one of these. So I'm just left clicking to start the line, left clicking again to set my first point, and then just right clicking to end that. And I'm going to finish this off here. And there's other ways that you could do this that might be easier, quicker. I'm just showing you one way to do it. And it's kind of nice because it gives you the option of deciding how you want to divide this space. So I probably chose more divisions than I really needed to, but what the heck, right? You guys have nothing else to do, nothing better to do right now, I'm sure. Right, okay. So now I have this these lines that are intersecting these profiles. If you look at it in perspective view, you can see that it's all on one plane. And what I'm going to do is run a command called intersect. I'm just typing intersect at the prompt, pressing enter, and it asks me select objects to intersect. These are the objects that I want to intersect, everything essentially here. And I'm doing this in the top view. Press enter when done. And what that essentially gives me is a set of intersections between the lines that we just drew and the profile of the terrain.